were or are there any of the 10 tribes still in Germany? This is a question that we are often asked. We asked it because this is what we occupy ourselves with. This is what we do. This is what we stand for. My name is Yair Davidiy. I am speaking to you from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. And our organisation, Brit-Am, Hebrew Nations, searches for the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes, and we have shown the lost 10 tribes now to be amongst Western nations. We have proven it, and this is what we do. We research the subject, we bring proofs about it, we bring this to the attention of the public. We work towards reconciliation of Judah, that is the Jewish people, and the 10 tribes of Israel. And a good portion of our audience is in America, it's in the USA, and many of the USA population, especially many of those who are interested in this subject amongst the population of the USA, are of German origin. They had ancestors who came from Germany at some stage or other. So naturally they're interested in this question. And but this question is difficult for us, because we can say that the 10 tribes were once in Germany. 10 tribes moved out of Germany, and most of them migrated to the USA. And the great migrations of that time. And this might sound a little fanciful, a little far-fetched, but it is backed up by the facts, as we shall show, or by indications of history and also scripture, that Germany recently, that is in the Second World War, Germany had a war against the Jewish people. They attempted to exterminate the Jewish nation. They wiped out a good portion of the Jewish people. They did this in a very cruel and sadistic manner. After the Second World War, the Germans have proceeded to rehabilitate their image. They have presented themselves as having changed. And maybe they have changed to some degree. Even under the Nazis, not all Germans were in agreement with the Nazi policy, so the majority of the German people did go along with it. And many of them very, very enthusiastically did so. Nevertheless, you can never tell. Maybe there has been a change, or maybe positive forces have come to the fore. Germany has helped the state of Israel. It still supports the state of Israel. Though, according to surveys, more than 40% of the Germanic population is anti-Jewish. And also, as well as helping the state of Israel, Germany has also worked against it. We have both tendencies, both forces are at play. Germany has also supported and still supports the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are working to undermine and destroy the state of Israel. So things could turn either way, and Germany could eventually turn out to be much nastier than we would ever wish to imagine it. Whatever the case, this is the reality. On the other hand, amongst German Americans, descendants of German Americans in the USA, we do not find a greater proportion of anti-Jews, of anti-Semites amongst them, when compared to other sections of the populace. On the whole, they are pro-Israel, they're in support of the state of Israel, or at least not against it, and they get along with the Jews and have nothing against the Jews. They're, as if to say, a different people altogether, as reflected by the historical experiences and the expression they've given to themselves historically. We find in Europe, amongst those nations in which the lost tribes were dominant, we find Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, France, Ireland, Ulster, Wales, England and Scotland. And all of these regions skirt around the area of Germany and encompass it. So also amongst the Germans there were Israelites. Israelites were present, but they were not the majority, and historically the indications are that the majority of those people of Israelite ancestry who had been in Germany, they moved out and they moved to the USA, because the people who moved to the USA were different from those who remained on the whole. Remember, we're speaking in general terms, we're speaking on averages, and we're giving an overall picture. There may be numerous exceptions in all directions. And historically, we have traced the lost 10 tribes were exiled. There were originally 12 tribes of Israel. These 12 tribes of Israel split into two different sections. The northern kingdom, comprised of 10 tribes of Israel, was taken to exile by the Assyrians, and we trace them to different areas of the Middle East. From there they moved to the north and moved into what is now southern Russia, southeast Europe, and from there they progressed to the west. And a good portion of these nations, whom we identify historically as belonging to the 10 tribes of Israel, whom we have proven, passed through Germany. The Vandals, the Goths, the Angles and the Saxons, also a good portion of the Celtic peoples, all of them passed through Germany at one stage or another. And then we had the invasions. There were the great invasions of the British Isles and of France by the Angles and Saxons and the Jutes and the Vandals and the Goths and so on, and the Franks. And after these invasions, a good portion of Germany was evacuated. New peoples came in from the east. Some of these peoples were Slavonic and they settled in Germany. Later on there was a movement backwards, so some German-speaking groups who conquered the incomers and forced them to speak German, forced them to accept German culture, and so the German nation, as if to say, grew backwards, eastward. Afterwards there were changes, additional changes, demographic changes in Germany, when more and more non-Israelite elements came in. And so that is an outline of it, and all this is documented and is known about, it is accepted more or less amongst the academic mainstream historian. Period 1840 to 1900, a little bit afterwards, there was a massive emigration from Germany to the USA. This is when the bulk of the migrants came. They came in this period. And today about 50 million or more than 50 million Americans are descended from the German ancestry, and to some degree or other. A good portion of the Germans who came in that period, they came from the northeast and from the southwest. The northeast portion of what was then Germany, before there were changes in Europe, what was in Germany, the northeast portion was that area that had been inhabited by non-Germanic peoples who had been forced to become German in the past. So too in the southwest, historically those regions had been originally Celtic peoples, so-called Celtic peoples, who had had Germanic culture imposed upon them. So this is already indicative. Many of the people who came, they were looking to improve their economic position, and also to assert their social independence. Their social independence they could not abide by. They had trouble with the existing establishment. The hierarchic order that then existed in Germany was too oppressive for them. They just wanted their freedom, they wanted the ability to better themselves, to socially advance themselves. On the whole, they were, I'm speaking in the terms of averages, they were a little bit better off than their fellow German citizens. They were better educated. They were even physically a little bit different, a little bit taller, and a little bit more, one could say, assertive. And on speaking in very general terms, and these were the people who moved to the USA. Politically, they were more liberal. They were liberal ideologically, from the ideological point of view. They also believed more in innate human dignity and human rights. And also they were less anti-Jewish than the other Germans. This has been proven by different studies. Less anti-Jewish, and also more open to other opinions. And in a sense, they were different. They were different in several important ways from the people who remained behind. In other words, we had different groups who had been physically isolated, had been physically separated in many ways from the main Germanic populations. Also, socially, they'd been different. They had not really found their place in Germanic society. And they had proven their ability to get ahead, but the environment in Germany was not conducive to allowing them to fulfill themselves, so they moved to the USA. And so we have seen that these people were in effect non-Germans. They were people of perhaps of Germanic culture, of Germanic language, but they were of different ancestry to the Germans who remained behind. So now we come to the question of who were the Germans. The Germans were descendant from different groups, from different ancestors. One of the ancestors of the Germans was Gomer. Gomer, and who was mainly in the north, was also Magog in the south. Gomer was the son of Japheth. Gomer had 3 sons, Ashkenaz, Gomer, and Ripah. In Germany, Ashkenaz especially was important, was predominant. That is why in Jewish culture, the Jews from Germany were referred to as Ashkenazim. Ashkenaz is another name for Germany in Jewish writings, and by virtue of this, it so happened that today all European Jews are referred to as Ashkenazim, meaning Jews who originally came from Germany. And so we have Gomer, descendants of Gomer and his sons being prominent in Germany. We have a prophecy in Hosea concerning the sons of Gomer and Israel. Hosea speaks of a woman who the prophet Hosea was commanded to take a woman, to have children by her, and these 3 children are shown to be symbolic of the lost 10 tribes in their places of exile. After that, we have the sages telling us where the lost 10 tribes are, and also telling us where the children of Gomer are. And in these places that the sages mention, in the Talmud and Midrashim and so on, they mention the same regions. And we have, historically, we find people whom we identify as the lost 10 tribes, whom the Assyrians have taken into exile. In their places of exile, we find other peoples, known as the Gomer and the Scythians, with whom the lost 10 tribes federated, with whom they joined together. So, taking these three sources of evidence as together, combining them, we see that the lost 10 tribes in their places of exile were destined to federate, to mix, to combine together with other peoples from Gomer, descendants of Gomer, the son of Japheth, and to for a while to share the same fate, the same destiny, to become one people with them, until in the end times they would separate out. And we trace these peoples into southern Russia, and there from southern Russia they moved westward and they settled in Western Europe. And so we have these peoples whom we have said moved westward with other peoples of Germanic culture, who adopted German culture, or received German culture on the way, some in different ways. And we have these people whom we otherwise identify as Israelites, moving together with Germanic non-Israelite peoples. And this is the aspect of Gomer that we find indicated in the Bible. Amos had already predicted that the 10 tribes in their places of exile would be sifted through a sieve, but God would nevertheless have preserved them as they were. Amos 9, verse 9, he says, "But I command to shake the house of Israel among all the nations, as one shakes with a sieve, but no pebble shall fall to the ground." And then verse 10, "All the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, who say evil shall not overtake or meet me." And verse 11, "On that day will raise up the booth of David that is fallen, and repair its breaches, and raise up its ruins, and rebuild it as in the days of old, in order that they may possess the remnant of Edom, and all the nations of the earth are called by my name, says the Lord who does this." So now we have the aspect of Edom. Who was Edom? Edom was the twin brother of Jacob. Jacob was otherwise known as Israel, gave rise to the first 12 tribes of Israel. And Edom gave rise to numerous nations. One nation that Edom gave rise to is known as the Edomites. They lived to the southeast of Judah. They were converted to Judaism and they became part of the Jewish people. But they were a relatively small minority amongst the Jews from the very beginning, and even they, a good portion of them apparently according to tradition, became Christians later on, so they left the Jewish people. Whatever the case, apart from these Edomians or other descendants from Esau is also known as Edom, who became important nations in their own right, or the heads of nations. It had been promised that they would live in fertile regions, and that they would live by the sword and be powerful nations, and they became ruling elites amongst several different national groups, and they too became important amongst the Germanic peoples. So the Germanic people had an aspect of Edom amongst them. So too the Japanese, amongst their, not talking about all the Japanese, just a ruling element amongst their aristocracy and those who determined their national character, also received an input from Esau, from Edom. And so this is worth noting. So in a sense, Germany had aspects of Edom as well. We also note that there's such a thing as genetic drift and family changes. Different studies of genealogical studies of family names and so on show that within certain populations, at certain stages, certain groups are predominant, and then these groups diminish. They go away, or they die out, and other elements take control or become dominant in their stead. This is known as genetic drift. It is a known historical phenomenon that can be traced, and different researchers have traced it or shown evidence of it. Apart from that, we have different prophecies, for instance, in the book of Obadiah, and in other parts of the Bible, when it's predicted in the end times that Joseph will defeat Edom. Joseph will war against Esau and will defeat him. And a prototypical example of this future confrontation occurred in World War II, when the descendants of Joseph, that is English-speaking peoples of Britain and the USA, fought against the Germans of Germany. They fought against the forces of Edom. Edom was also, according to tradition, amongst the founders of Rome. So in the Second World War, we had a classical case of all the forces of Edom arrayed against the English-speaking Anglo-Saxon descendants of Joseph. We had Edomites amongst the Japanese. We had Edomites amongst the Italians, amongst some of the Italians, but they had taken control at that time, and also amongst the Germans. And there will be a repeat performance of this in the future. Not necessarily amongst those very same nations, but the forces of Edom against Joseph will be once again arrayed against each other, and we will see how matters result. May the God of Israel bless all of you.